So Matthew asks, I'd like to know your opinion on a few things. My dogs have been training at a place that uses leash corrections on a choke collar, and they are transitioning to a prong collar soon. They don't use food rewards to teach the commands in the first place, mostly just corrections. I've seen a dog go through their program and it worked, but I can't help but wonder if there's a more rewarding experience they could have. Both my dogs are sweet and gentle and only have minor problems like jumping at the door. I'm not against tools at all. I'm just wondering if you think they are being used right for my dogs. I just want them to have a gentle, fun training experience, but I'm not against corrections. Just feel they should be rewarded more for being correct. This is a great question.
Very valid concerns, too.
Good question, right? So to answer the first question, or one of the questions in there, which is, are they being used correct, right? Mm-hmm. I would not assume that they're being used incorrect. I'm not seeing the training, obviously, right? So I can't necessarily tell you yes, no, right? Yeah. But used correct is very subjective, right? Because one, there's a lot of ways you could use training tools, right? So correct to whose standards would be the first question I ask, right? The second thing is it the right approach for your dog? That's also subjective, right? Because here's the thing, right? Like, again, this training is probably going to work well for these dogs. Yeah. It's probably going to get them to a place where they listen great. But we know that training isn't so much about did it work for the dog. A lot of times it's did it work for the owner and accomplish the goals they have, right? And some people, obviously, I mean, we get plenty of clients that just don't want to use food. They don't want to use rewards, contrary to what a lot of people would probably think, which is everybody wants to reward their dog. Some people have no interest in it. They're like, I just want my dog to fucking do it, right? That's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I might educate you on some places where maybe we should loosen up with the dog a little bit, or we don't have to be so strict, or maybe we make it a little bit more fun for them. But like, if you don't care about that, I ain't going to put that much emphasis into it. I can train a dog without food perfectly fine, right? Yeah. But if I get a client that comes in that in this boat, if as I'm talking to them when they come in for their training session, they're like, all right, well, like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? They're like, my dog jumps on people and runs at the front door, but has zero aggression issues, is great with other dogs, is great with guests, they're very sweet dogs, right? And I just want to have a fun experience training the dogs. I'm going to cater the program towards that. Yeah. Right? Especially if the dogs have good food motivation and stuff like that. All right, cool. Right? Like, obviously we don't have any big goals. Like the jumping, I could stop in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? And we could, I could tell him like, well, listen, we could be firm on the jumping. We can get that under control like that. Yep. Right? And then as soon as we've got that under control, we got one of your big goals accomplished. You're not having very many other major issues, but you want your dogs to listen a little bit better to you. We could take our time with the other things. Right? We could spend the time reinforcing the dogs and teaching them to have a good relationship with the training and use more food and stuff like that, right? Oh, yeah. So if you feel like you want more of an approach like that, and listen, I also want to caveat this with, I don't let my clients dictate what I do, obviously, from the standpoint of like, if somebody came in and said, I want to use more food in training, but their dog's a fucking psychopath and they have zero control over them and, like the dog's biting other dogs and being really reactive and stuff like that, like I still have the right to veto that and say, well, that's probably not the right thing that we should be focused on right now because A, B, C, or D, but I should be able to articulate that clearly to you. Yeah. Right? So if that's a concern of yours, right, the first thing I would say is you can bring it up to your trainer, right? Ask them. Be like, hey, like, why can't we use a little bit more reinforcement, And don't say it in a way where it's like, this other trainer told you, you know what I mean? Like, don't say it in that kind of way. Just ask, like, hey, I'm literally curious, right? Like, I would like the dogs to enjoy the training process, right? And it doesn't seem like we're using a lot of positive reinforcement. Like, why is that the case? And what you may find is the trainer may have a very valid reason, right? They may be seeing something I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing your dogs. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything about your dogs aside from what you told me. And, obviously, no offense to you, but I've had a lot of people tell me one thing about dogs before, and it be a very opposite thing when I actually see the dogs. Right? Yeah. So I would ask them, see if they have a logical reason for it, or maybe they say, sure, we could add some in. No problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of cases, I know from personal experience and what I've seen before too, sometimes sometimes it just like to us doesn't seem that necessary because the dog's moving through things perfectly fine, but it's like, it also isn't going to hurt anything to add it in. So if somebody said, hey, can I use some treats through the process? I'll be like, Sure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're moving along fine, but if you want to add in some reinforcement, I mean, whatever. I don't have a problem with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So have the conversation first, right? And this is a part of like when you're working with a trainer, you have to trust that you could have conversations like that. And again, not be confrontational about things, right? Because you don't want to be the guy that's also questioning everything the trainer is doing. Yeah. But if you have questions about things, you got to ask them and see, does this person have sound logic behind the methods they're using? Yeah. Right? I try to always position myself where if you ask me why I'm doing something with a dog, I can articulate pretty darn clearly why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And then you could see, does that make sense to me or not? Mm-hmm. So that's how I'd look at that situation.
Yeah.